A lot of prep companies overcomplicate reading comp with fancy strategies that would never work in a timed setting where you only have 8 minutes and 45 seconds on average to read an LSAT reading comp passage and solve the associated questions. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I increased my LSAT score from a 152 to a 175, and I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005. Strangely enough, reading comp actually came pretty naturally to me on the LSAT, in contrast to logic games, which took me a long time to get down. And when I look at what worked for me on LSAT reading comp, it wasn't some fancy strategy. It wasn't note-taking, highlighting, or underlining. It was as simple as reading the passage and trying to determine what is the main idea of this passage. What is the author's opinion? If the author could leave me with only one central idea, what would that be? And so I found in my experience that this worked for a lot of my students as well. The students who do the best on reading comp, I found, mark very little or not at all. And when I think about why this is the case, a couple ideas come to mind. One is that it takes time to write things down. Another is that it takes time to read things, and the things you write down may not end up actually being useful to help you solve the questions associated with the passage. Another factor worth considering with the online LSAT now is that the highlighting and underlining tools within LSAT's Law Hub are kind of glitchy, just as glitchy as the ones you'll be using on test day itself. And so if you're using some private prep company's platform to do your practice tests, you'll be in for a rude awakening when on test day, the highlighting or the underlining does not work as well as what you've been practicing with, which is why I always recommend using LSAT's Law Hub for all of your timed practice tests so that you can get more familiar with what you'll actually be dealing with on your official LSAT exam. Now, LSAT does give you scratch paper for the test, and so if you want to, you could take some very, very brief notes about the passage. What is the main idea? What is the author's opinion? But I would leave it at that because, again, it takes time to write things and takes time to read things, and you've only got, on average, 8 minutes and 45 seconds with standard LSAT timing. 4 passages times 8:45 is 35 minutes per section. Now, when it comes to allocating your time over the course of the passage, I have found that far too many students spend way too long on their initial read of the passage, and as a result, they don't have time to solve the associated questions. If you spend any longer than 3 minutes on the passage, I'd consider revising how much time you allocate to your initial read of the passage versus the questions, because there are, on average, 7 questions associated with each passage. And so 8 minutes and 45 seconds per passage minus 3 minutes for your read of the passage and any notes you're taking only leaves you with 5 minutes and 45 seconds for the 7 questions associated, meaning that you already have less than 1 minute per question. You really don't want to go below that. Now, of course, some questions will be easier than others. Some you'll be able to solve faster than you can solve others. So I recommend approaching the questions in an order that lets you knock out the easiest questions first, locking up your points with the low-hanging fruit. I group reading comp questions into 3 major buckets. You have your global questions like main idea, primary purpose, passage organization, tone, title, author's opinion. You then have your local questions, which are your more detail-oriented questions. On the paper LSAT, they would give you line reference numbers. On the online LSAT, they highlight it in the question stem, as well as in the passage itself, in a kind of blue-green color. And then the last category of questions would be the more inferential questions, which require a bit more reading between the lines, kind of like your most strongly supported questions in LSAT logical reasoning. And so I would knock out the global questions first. Those are your easy points, and they also give you LSAT's articulation of the main idea, which is pretty useful because it's going to be less clear than how you would have articulated it, but it'll still give you a better idea of what the author's opinion actually is or what the main idea actually is. And of course, if you don't know the main idea, you don't know anything, time to go back to basics and make sure that you're crystal clear on what the author wrote and why. Next, you solve your local detail questions, and finally, your more inferential questions that require more reading between the lines, building your understanding of the passage as you go. Now, of course, if you would like my help adopting this kind of approach where you're minimalistic in your note-taking and you are strategic in how you solve the questions, if you'd like my help in reducing the notes that you're taking, yet still maintaining accuracy or improving your accuracy, of course, you can check out the links below the video to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. LSAT reading comp remains 1/3 of the test, and it has a lot of overlap with LSAT logical reasoning as well. And so you might want to consider reducing your note-taking in logical reasoning as well, since of course it'll be 2/3 of the test starting in August. Anyway, folks, that's all for now. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.